He just wants you to know that he's your brother. Right, just finish the job.
As a teenager, I was influenced most profoundly and challenged most disturbingly by Fyodor Dostoevsky's brother Karamazov, especially by the preface to the poem The Grand Inquisitor that Ivan Karamazov recited to his brother Aloysia. In The Brothers Karamazov, Dostoevsky's semi-atheist protagonist, Ivan, overwhelmingly postulated in the section entitled Rebellion a hugely challenging question of the suffering of the innocent child ripped to pieces by the purposefully sent wolfhounds, and what that tells us about God and the world to come. 60 years later, such fictional story became even more tangible through the extermination of at least 6 million innocents in the Shoah. Does Adventist vision of the cosmic conflict have any bearing on theological and ethical challenges of such terrible tragedies? If the great controversy between good and evil refers merely to the celestial realm and not to the real horrors of the world in which we exist, the concept must surely be deemed out of date and irrelevant. The reality of burning human bodies is experienced during the Holocaust, while Christians stood by observing and even supporting Hitler, must affect the Seventh Adventist understanding of the end and trigger a significantly deeper theological reflection and more robust ethical response. This paper intends to explore moral responsibility of an eschatological church that believes God to be fully involved in the here and now, in the great controversy between good and evil, and not a God who is merely interested in the final outworkings of the cosmic conflict for the benefit of clearing his name and disproving devil's attack on his character. Firstly, Ivan's rebellion. Dostoevsky masterfully crafted the character of evil, making him a vehicle for profound philosophical dilemmas that continue to captivate readers and thinkers alike. Ivan's rebellion centers around the problem of innocent suffering, particularly that of children. He questions the moral calculus of a world where children endure unspeakable pain and cruelty, and his revolt begins with his rejection of a benevolent God who allows the existence of such immense suffering. He presents several harrowing anecdotes in what Sigve Tonstad described as white-hot fury, which have all been taken from the real stories reported in the newspapers or court trials of Dostoevsky's time. It's important to notice that in this fictional narrative, the stories were actually literal events gathered for literary impact of deep challenge to the morality-broken world that we encounter. Included was the gruesome tale of a young boy who is stripped naked and then torn to pieces by a whole pack of dogs, set upon the boy by the landowner general and in front of the boy's mother. Another story he retells from Geneva about a boy who lived as a slave and was treated as an object or as a savage, often naked and hungry, hunting for small scraps of food. He committed a crime for which he was condemned to death. And I quote now from Dostoevsky, "In prison they taught him to read and write, began expounding the gospel to him, exhorted him, persuaded him, pushed him, pestered him, urged him, and finally he himself solemnly confessed his crime. He repented and wrote to the court himself saying that he was a monster and that at last he had been deemed worthy of being illuminated by the Lord and of receiving of grace. All Geneva rejoiced at his conversion and wept with him, even though he was hungry to the point that he envied the swine their food and were beaten for stealing the food. He was guilty and he had to die." Ivan concludes this story. "And so covered with the kisses of his brothers, Brother Richard is dragged up onto the scaffold, laid down on the guillotine, and his head is whacked off in brotherly fashion for as much as grace has descended upon him too. The emotional and ethical impact of a little 5-year-old girl beaten to death by her parents is even more striking. Ivan is foaming at the mouth, and the passage warrants longer direct quote. These educated parents subjected the poor 5-year-old girl to every possible torture. They beat her, flogged her, kicked her, not knowing why themselves until her whole body was nothing but bruises. Finally, they attained the height of finesse. In the freezing cold, they locked her all night in the outhouse because she wouldn't ask to get up and go in the middle of the night, as if a 5-year-old girl child sleeping in sound angelic sleep could have learned to ask by that age. For that, they smeared her face with her excrement and made her eat her excrement. And it was her mother who made her. And this mother could sleep while her poor little child was moaning all night in that vile place. Can you understand that a small creature who cannot even comprehend what is being done to her in a vile place, in the dark and the cold, beats herself to her strained little chest with her tiny fists and weeps with anguish, gentle, meek tears for dear God to protect her? It is the innocence of the little children mistreated and abused that Ivan objects to the most, the way he provides Aloysia, as David Bentley Hart put it, with a grim, unremitting, remorseless recitation of stories about torture and murder. In exploring the moral implications of Ivan's rebellion, we must also consider the impact of his rejection of God on his own behavior. Ivan's moral struggle extends to his personal life, leading to a sense of moral paralysis and a questioning of the value of morality itself. His struggle exemplifies the ethical crisis that can emerge when individuals confront the apparent incongruity between the existence of a loving God and the existence of such incomprehensible and immense suffering of blameless children. These stories reflect the senseless and brutal nature of suffering in the world, and they serve as the foundation for Ivan's arguments against God's goodness and providence, and his rebellion is a pivotal element in Dostoevsky's novel, which raises weighty questions about the relationship between God, morality, and suffering. Ivan's rejection of a benevolent God and his assertion that everything is permitted without God challenge traditional Christian ethics. Ivan's rebellion is not just a philosophical abstraction. At its core, it is crisis of faith and a search for meaning in a world filled with suffering and injustice. He raises questions that have plagued theologians and philosophers for centuries. Does the existence of evil negate the existence of a benevolent God? How can humans find meaning and purpose in a seemingly indifferent universe? And ultimately, what may be responses, verbal, or as his following poem, The Grand Inquisitor, possibly indicates, non-verbal, such as pure and actionable love, is expressed in Christ, who embraced even those who seemed to reject him and his world. Ultimately, Ivan's rebellion is a testament to the complexity of human belief and doubt. Through Ivan Karamazov, Dostoevsky invites us to grapple with these questions and to explore the boundaries of faith and morality. Ivan's rebellion serves as a timeless literary and philosophical touchstone, prompting us to contemplate the intricacies of the human soul and the nature of our relationship with the divine. Secondly, gas chambers. Hannah Arendt's concept of the banality of evil underscores the fact that ordinary people committed heinous crimes and acts during the Holocaust. The mid-20th century gas chambers, a horrific instrument of mass murder during the Holocaust, posed an immense challenge to Christian ethics. The Holocaust represents one of the darkest chapters of human history, and it forces Christians to confront intense moral and theological questions about the nature of evil, theodicy, and human responsibility. The Holocaust, orchestrated by the Nazi regime during World War II, resulted in a systematic extermination of millions of Jews and other minority groups, primarily in gas chambers. The sheer scale of this atrocity defies comprehension and leaves an incredible scar on the collective human conscience. As theologian Elie Wiesel, a Holocaust survivor, aptly stated, there may be times when we are powerless to prevent injustice, but there must never be a time when we fail to protest. Wiesel's words capture the acute moral imperative to confront and condemn the Holocaust and similar acts of evil. From a Christian ethical perspective, the Holocaust challenges the foundation of Christian beliefs. It calls into question classical theodicy, which seeks to reconcile the existence of benevolent and omnipotent God with the presence of evil and suffering in the world on such a large scale. How can an all-loving, all-powerful God allow such an egregious manifestation of evil? The gas chambers where innocent men, women, and children met gruesome deaths epitomize this challenge. Furthermore, the Holocaust calls into question the efficacy of prayer and the belief in divine providence. How could God seemingly remain silent and passive in the face of such unspeakable horrors? How could the prayers of millions go unanswered? Christian theologians, Dietrich Bonhoeffer and others, took part in the resistance against the Nazi regime, and ultimately he paid with his life, grappled with these issues. He posited that the Christian must act ethically and courageously, even in the absence of divine intervention, as one cannot rely solely on prayers when confronted with such malevolence. The Holocaust tests Christian ethics by highlighting the moral responsibility of individuals and institutions. The complicity of some Christians and the silence of many Christian leaders during the Holocaust provoked questions about the Christian response to evil. The Protestant denominations and the Catholic Church in general, as well as Seventh-day Adventist Church in particular, have faced criticism, and rightly so, for not doing enough to condemn the Holocaust and protect Jewish individuals. While there were notable exceptions, such as the actions of individuals maybe like Oskar Schindler and groups like the Confessing Church in Germany, the broader Christian response remains a subject of moral reflection and self-examination because of its failings. Martin Luther King Jr. is attributed to have once remarked, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. This statement resonates with the ethical imperative to speak out against evil and injustice. Silence in the face of the Holocaust challenges the core Christian values of love, compassion, and social justice. It raises questions about the Christian duty to love one's neighbor and protect the vulnerable, especially in the face of egregious harm. In the aftermath of the Holocaust, Christian theologians and ethicists have grappled with the implications of Christian ethics, and I'm not sure whether we have done enough in grappling. Figures like Reinhold Niebuhr and others have explored the relationship between faith and ethics in the wake of such profound moral challenges. I don't think we as Adventists have done so on any serious scale. They have emphasized the need for ethical reflection, repentance, and commitment to ensure that such atrocities never happen again. Lastly, the need for Adventist deeper moral vision of the great controversy. The term cosmic conflict or great controversy has become a catch-all for a wide range of agendas. Under the heading of the cosmic issue, the book Seventh-day Adventists Believe asks and answers, what is the pivotal issue in the life and death struggle? God's government and law. Norman Galley states the cosmic controversy has to do with the love of God. According to Herb Douglas, the central issue in the great controversy is over who can best run the universe, God or Satan. That said, it is clear that the great controversy theme, though not necessarily unique to Adventism, has greatly influenced its theology and practice. Ellen White's reference to the great controversy is a major part of the grand central theme of the Bible. Quote, the student should learn to view the world as a whole and to see the relation of its parts. He should gain a knowledge of its grand central theme, of God's original purpose for the world, of the rise of the great controversy, and of the work of redemption. Yet, despite its role as the meta-narrative of the whole Bible, the great controversy theme, as frequently understood, can leave some troubling moral and ethical dilemmas. As noted earlier, it is simply the outworking of a heavenly duel between Christ and Satan, in which planet Earth and its inhabitants are simply some collateral damage. That's a serious problem. While the issue over God's character is central to the great controversy theme, the consequent impact of the fall of Lucifer and the subsequent fall of Adam and Eve must not be minimized. The horrors of evil, and with it the excruciating suffering that fill the past and the present, are not to be dismissed with reference to this theme. That is often the way in which the great controversy is used, however. A second problem is that of disinvolvement. If the great controversy in this inevitable process of demonstration that God is good and Satan is evil, for example, then it simply has to play itself out. Sad things happen, but that's just part of the process, and we become inured to pain and suffering because that's what's involved in the great controversy. This leads to a third consequence. It's surely no coincidence the latest version of Ellen White's book, The Great Controversy, that is being mass-mailed to millions, has at its front cover a picture of the globe with chess pieces scattered over it. That raises the question of our role in this cosmic conflict. Are we simply inanimate pieces in this chess game between God and the devil? To what degree does God care about those pieces he loses? Or is it okay, all okay, because he eventually wins? As Sigrid Tonstad, the bank so acutely explains, I quote, future harmony as Christians envision it cannot make up for the torment of the child whose fate Ivan has described, and for the torment of millions of children whose stories have never been told, end of quote. Or as David Bentley Hart asserts that nothing makes those sufferings somehow wholly meaningful and therefore unscandalous. The cross of Christ is not, after all, simply an eternal validation of pain and death, but their overthrow. In so many ways we can see a distorted picture of God here, In so many ways we can see a distorted picture of God here, as well as a sense that our role is only as a chess piece is controlled by God. What of the individual roles we play, in that we are meant to be a spectacle to angels and to men? In many ways, as we probe deeper, the great controversy, understood too simply, does not make God look good. To allow this long period of suffering of others simply to vindicate God's character seems very self-referenced. To permit pain that we could easily prevent is damaging to the picture we have of a loving God, let alone if one believes in eternally burning hell, which fortunately most of us don't. Is it really necessary to demonstrate the consequences of evil over such a long time? For our answers to our questions, we need to look at God's involvement in the great controversy. From Eden onward, God is involved. He experiences the consequences even more than we do. Most of all, we see Him coming in the flesh, rejected by His own, and crucified by human hands. Most of all, because He did not fit our concepts of God. When it comes to the great controversy, this is more than a convenient solution to a theological question. It seems that on too many occasions, Adventist ethics has resembled more a fluffy, nutritionless white bread that has very little, if any, nutritional value when consumed. Adventist economic ethics and issues of social, racial, and environmental concerns have made at times very little impact on the Church's thinking or engagement. And yet the cosmic conflict fought on the level of the great controversy between good and evil is not only a fight between Christ and Satan on some faraway and cosmic level, but it is brought to the fight into our midst, whether in social sphere like the Holocaust, or more recently in Ukraine and in Palestine, or as Ivan Karamazov rightly pointed out, on too many individual levels where carnages are committed by individuals massacring and torturing other individuals, be it as atrocities to children pulled apart by the horses into pieces, parents punishing atrociously children even to the point of having them smearing their excrements all over their faces, or having them shot in schools by AK-47s. And that cosmic battles are taking place in our neighborhoods. But our responses are too often timid or apolitical, or in some cases even worse, as we quietly justify the perpetrators or side with those that are on the side of the oppressor. I'm yet to see a robust anti-gun or Black Lives Matter debates in our midst. My invitation is for a more robust Adventist ethics, the thick ethics in our here and now, as we anticipate the good to conquer over evil in the cosmic conflict at the final culmination. To extend the bread metaphor, instead of fluffy white bread that has absolutely no nutritional value, our great controversy team calls for an Ezekiel bread ethics, or healthy nutritionally packed German bread, or minimally an ethical stand on the whole grain bread, what we call in Croatia the black bread. Last paragraph in conclusion. Today, as I was putting final touches to this paper, 4,237 children have been killed in 1 month of Israeli bombardments in Gaza, the graveyard of citizens, as UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called it. And we still sit here without being able to raise our voices in outrage against Israeli military operations, so that we would not offend our friends and allies, or our politicians, or even our evangelical brothers who utterly misunderstand the biblical eschatology. When will enough be enough? When will we employ much thicker and deeper ethics of the battle between good and evil and declare such carnages for what they truly are? How is this, that what is happening in real time in our time, in today's history, being different from the tortured little girl who was beating her chest for dear God to protect her? How is it different to the time when Jewish population, the Roma community members, the communist and the queer community members were exterminated by the millions in gas chambers, and Christians said nothing and did nothing to stop the Holocaust?